It started as a routine political panel, just another live broadcast on a national network, meant to stir conversation and draw evening viewers. The topic was policing reform and racial equity, already a heated subject. Sitting across from each other were two political firebrands, Representative Jasmine Crockett, known for her sharp wit and unapologetic presence, and Larry Elder, the conservative commentator with a flair for provocation. From the first minute, the tension was electric. The moderator introduced the topic with a brief statement about disparities in law enforcement. Larry leaned forward, his voice calm but condescending. "Let's be honest," he said, "this constant talk of systemic racism is just political theater. There are no barriers in America today that keep anyone from succeeding. It's all about personal responsibility." Crockett didn't flinch. She had heard it all before, but her eyes narrowed just slightly, the signal that she was ready. "I'm glad you brought up personal responsibility," she replied evenly, "because that's something you often demand from others but rarely take for your own statements, Larry." A hum went through the audience. Elder smiled, as if waiting for a trap to spring. But Jasmine wasn't bluffing. Jasmine leaned in, her voice steady but cutting. "You sit here dismissing lived experiences as if they're exaggerations. But let's be real, what you call theater is my reality, and the reality of millions of Americans. You can quote stats all day, but the human cost is not just numbers, it's trauma, fear, and lives lost." Larry chuckled, brushing it off. "So what do you want? Apologies forever? Perpetual victimhood? We've had a black president, black billionaires, black mayors, your narrative just doesn't hold." The audience murmured again, a few gasps. The moderator tensed, ready to step in. Jasmine didn't blink. "You think representation cancels out oppression?" she shot back. "A few success stories don't erase an entire system built to favor one group over others. One black president doesn't mean the struggle ended, it just means we climbed despite the weight, not because it was lifted." Larry raised an eyebrow. "So you're saying America's still racist?" Jasmine's tone sharpened like a blade. "I'm saying America has wounds it refuses to treat. And every time someone like you tells us it's all in our heads, you make it bleed more." The room fell silent. Larry shifted in his chair. For the first time, his confidence cracked slightly. "So what's your solution, Congresswoman?" he asked, tone suddenly clipped. "What do you propose we do, tear everything down and start over?" Jasmine folded her hands calmly, but her eyes were blazing. "No, Larry. We build better. We hold people accountable. We invest in communities instead of criminalizing them. We stop pretending that equality means everyone's already at the same starting line." He scoffed. "That's just progressive fluff, more government, more division. You want to divide Americans by race, by class. I want to stop pretending we're united when some of us are still gasping for air," she cut in. "You call it division. I call it truth-telling. And truth makes people uncomfortable, especially when they've been shielded from it their whole lives." The moderator tried to interject, but neither of them looked away. Larry leaned back, clearly irritated. "People like you push identity politics to gain power. You're not helping anyone. You're just keeping people angry." Jasmine tilted her head. "No, Larry. I'm keeping people awake." Gasps and scattered applause rippled across the audience. The moderator cleared his throat, attempting to regain control. "Let's move on to policy specifics," but Jasmine held up a finger without breaking eye contact with Larry. "No, let's stay here for a moment," she said. "Because this is the part where the conversation usually gets buried under polite pivots." She turned slightly to the camera now, addressing not just Larry, but the viewers at home. "You've heard him call this fluff, say we're just angry for the sake of it. But let me ask America, how would you feel if your son was pulled over 5 times before he turned 18, for nothing? How would you feel if your cousin died in jail waiting for trial because they couldn't afford bail?" She paused. "That's not fluff. That's pain. That's real life. Larry tried to jump in, but Jasmine wasn't finished. You sit in studios and call it a myth. I sit in Congress and see it in letters from families. I see it in mothers' eyes who can't get their kids back from a system designed to forget them. And you want to debate whether it's real? Larry opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The audience was dead quiet now. Even the moderator looked stunned. You don't have to agree with me, Jasmine continued. But don't insult people by acting like our stories are just strategies. We don't need to make this up, Larry. We're living it. Larry finally found his voice, though it wavered slightly. You're emotional. That's understandable. But emotion doesn't fix policy. Facts do. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Facts. Okay. Let's talk facts. She pulled a paper from the folder beside her, not theatrically, just with quiet precision. Black Americans are more than twice as likely to be arrested for drug possession, despite equal usage rates. That's from the ACLU. Black children are 3 times more likely to be suspended from school, that's from the Department of Education. And black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, CDC data. She laid the sheet down and looked directly at him. Now tell me, which part of that isn't factual? Larry stared, mouth tight. I'm not denying disparities, he muttered. But you're focusing on race instead of root causes, fatherlessness, crime rates, poor education. Those aren't racism, they're cultural. Jasmine's voice dropped to a near whisper. No, Larry. That's the lie they sold you. What you call culture is often the result of decades of intentional policies, redlining, underfunding, over-policing. Systems designed to fail certain people and blame them for the failure. Her words landed like stones. The room was still. And then she looked straight at him and said, you don't get to diagnose the wound if you're too afraid to look at the knife. The silence that followed was deafening. Larry's smile was gone now. His fingers tapped the table, his posture stiff. He glanced toward the moderator, but Jasmine didn't give him the space to retreat. See, she said, this is what always happens. The second we start pulling back the curtain, people like you get uncomfortable. Because if you admit the system is broken, then you have to ask who broke it, and who benefits from keeping it that way. He sat back, folding his arms. That's a conspiracy theory mindset. Not everything is about race. Exactly, Jasmine said, nodding. Not everything. But when it keeps showing up in housing, hiring, healthcare, education, sentencing, wealth gaps, what do you call it, Larry? Coincidence? Over and over again. She leaned forward just slightly. It's not a conspiracy. It's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. A few audience members clapped quietly, breaking the hush. Others sat frozen, watching what felt more like a reckoning than a debate. The moderator finally stepped in, voice cautious. Let's try to keep this from becoming personal. Jasmine turned to him with a cool smile. This is personal. It's personal to every black family trying to survive in a system that keeps shifting the finish line. Then she looked back at Larry one last time. You can choose to ignore it, Larry. But just know, some of us don't have that luxury. Larry sat quiet, clearly rattled. He adjusted his tie, trying to reclaim composure. Well, he began, voice forced, I still believe success is possible for anyone who works hard. That's the America I know. Jasmine nodded slowly, letting his words hang in the air before answering. That's the America you know, Larry. The version built for you. And I don't doubt you worked hard, but the truth is, 2 people can run the same race, and one of them is carrying a 100-pound weight while the other isn't. You call it equal because the track looks the same. But you ignore the weight. Larry opened his mouth, but Jasmine was already speaking again. And that's what makes this debate so exhausting. You think we're asking for handouts. We're not. We're asking for fairness. For air. For the weight to be removed. A pause. Then she softened just slightly. No one wants to believe their success was helped by an uneven system. But the minute you accept that others were held back, it doesn't take away from your work, it just means we have to fix the race. The audience erupted into full applause now, sharp and sustained. Even the moderator looked surprised, glancing at his notes as if unsure how to move forward. Larry's face was tight. He reached for his water but didn't speak. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, calm, collected, her message delivered not with anger, but precision. The moderator tried to steer the conversation to closing statements, but the tone had shifted. What began as a typical sparring match had transformed into something far more profound, an unfiltered reckoning with truth on live television. Larry finally spoke again, quieter now. Look, I respect your passion, Jasmine. I do. But at the end of the day, we have to come together as Americans. Division only makes us weaker. She tilted her head thoughtfully. I agree, unity matters. But unity without honesty? That's just silence with a bow on top. The audience murmured again, this time with nods and quiet agreement. I don't want division, Jasmine continued. I want truth. I want us to look at this country not just through pride, but through accountability. Because that's how real unity happens, when we stop pretending, and start repairing. Larry stayed quiet. The moderator gave Jasmine the final word, almost instinctively sensing she had earned it. She looked directly into the camera, not for drama, but with sincerity. To those watching, especially the young people, don't let anyone gaslight your experience. Don't let anyone shame you into silence. This country can be better, but only if we're brave enough to challenge the comfortable lies. A beat of silence. And tonight, we did just that. The screen faded to black as the applause returned, louder, rising not just from agreement, but from something deeper, recognition. Backstage, the energy was electric. Producers exchanged glances, whispering that this debate would be replayed for days, if not weeks. Clips were already being pulled, shared, dissected online. Hashtags were trending before Jasmine even stepped off set. Larry left quietly, nodding to staffers without saying much. Whatever he'd expected going into the debate, it wasn't this. He had underestimated her, not just her knowledge, but her ability to own a moment and reshape it. Jasmine, meanwhile, stood calm in the hallway, sipping water as an assistant handed her a phone. You're going viral, they said, breathless. Everyone's talking about that knife line. She smirked slightly but didn't look smug. I didn't say anything new, she replied. I just said it where they couldn't ignore it. An older black woman who worked with the studio quietly approached, eyes moist. I just wanted to say, thank you, she whispered. For all of us who couldn't say it ourselves. Jasmine took her hand gently. That's why I'm here. As she walked toward the exit, cameras flashed and voices called her name, but she didn't rush. She had spoken her truth. And in a media landscape full of noise, for once, truth had echoed louder than spin.by the time Jasmine got home that night, her phone was a wall of missed calls, texts, and notifications. Friends. Colleagues. Journalists. Even rivals. Some praised her. Others were stunned into silence. A few, predictably, attacked her online, but their noise felt small now. The truth she delivered had resonated, and that kind of impact doesn't fade overnight. She sat in the quiet of her living room, shoes off, makeup smudged, scrolling through messages from young activists, students, and single mothers. One read, I watched with my teenage daughter. You gave her something to believe in tonight. She set the phone down, eyes glassy, chest full, not with pride, but with purpose. This wasn't about a debate. This wasn't about clapping back. It was about cutting through years of deflection with words that mattered. The clip from the show hit 5 million views by morning. News anchors replayed her statements, calling it one of the most defining political moments of the year. Headlines used words like seismic, unforgettable, and a shift in tone for the national conversation. But Jasmine didn't need the headlines. She didn't need the applause. She just needed the message to land. And it had. In the days that followed, the fallout from the debate continued to ripple across the country. Cable networks aired extended panels analyzing Jasmine's remarks. Universities played clips in classrooms. Late-night hosts quoted her words. Protest signs popped up with "Look at the knife" scrawled across cardboard. Even rival lawmakers, on both sides, begrudgingly admitted, something had shifted. Larry Elder appeared on a morning show, trying to reframe the debate as spirited discourse, but the tone was different. He seemed less sure, a bit more cautious. His usual rhetoric had met an immovable force, and lost ground. Meanwhile, Jasmine doubled down, not in aggression, but in clarity. She gave interviews, not to gloat, but to elaborate. She visited community centers, where kids ran up asking for selfies. She sat with organizers in cities often overlooked by the media. She reminded them, this wasn't just a moment. It was a message. And we keep building from here. Major publications started calling her a rising national voice. Quiet donors took notice. Activists whispered about a possible Senate run. But Jasmine wasn't focused on titles. She was focused on truth, and making sure it couldn't be ignored again. And for the first time in a long time, people weren't just watching. They were listening.